Welcome to the Workology Podcast, a podcast for the disruptive workplace leader. Join host Jessica Miller-Merrill, founder of Workology.com, as she sits down and gets to the bottom of trends, tools, and case studies for the business leader, HR, and recruiting professional who is tired of the status quo. Now here's Jessica with this episode of Workology.
It's a great time to be in talent acquisition. This is one thing that I know to be true. Right now, there are more recruiting job openings in the world, or at least in the US anyways, than programmer openings. Everyone is hiring, and every company needs talent acquisition leaders to reach their candidates, to hire and scale quickly. But the market to hire great talent continues to be a challenge, and that is true in certain key industries. And that's exactly what we're exploring here. The Workology Podcast is powered by Upskill HR and Ace the HR Exam. This podcast episode is part of a series called TA Insights for the Workology Podcast, and it's powered by my friends at Heroes Jobs. It's an opportunity for you, the TA leader, to share what's happening in this wacky talent marketplace right now. Think of it like speed networking, maybe a speed networking line where I introduce you to talent acquisition leaders you need to know. The good news is there is no travel or awkward handshakes or elbow bumps while you chat about the weather or how weird it is to be an event face to face. I've had those as of recent. Each episode in the TA Insights series features 3 7 to 10 minute interviews with different talent acquisition leaders. And then this podcast, we are focused on conversations with hospitality and restaurant leaders. Let's get started with this episode, shall we? Our first interview today is Rob Dromgool. He's a 20-plus year talent acquisition executive who is leading recruiting at the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. Rob has successfully led recruiting in a broad range of industries, from specialized high-tech, healthcare, to high-volume hospitality and gaming. He has sourced PhDs all the way to farmers, and Rob has helped to build sourcing and recruiting strategies paired with the right technology stack to enable the success of the organization. Hi, Rob. Welcome to the Workology Podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about the Choctaw Nation? It's the Choctaw Nation, right? Is that right?
Absolutely. Choctaw
Okay.
Nation of Oklahoma, which is different than the Choctaw tribe out of Mississippi. The Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma is approximately 200,000 tribal members.
Wow.
We're North America's third largest Native American tribe, and our reservation is the southeast corner of Oklahoma, and it is large enough actually where 8 different states can fit inside our reservation borders.
Holy cow.
And yeah, it's pretty big, and we have tribal members all over the world, but in terms of our actual operations, we have multiple business units. At present, we number approximately 12,000 what we call associates that work for the nation, and we operate numerous casinos, 3 of which are resort-sized, but we also have 9 different hospitals. We have multiple farms. We even have cattle ranches, and we even have a drone range where we partner with NASA and the FAA for testing. So the diversity of placement is ranging from everything from IT to running some of our larger casinos and resorts. It's a lot of fun.
Never a dull moment, I feel like, in your
Never
job.
a dull moment. Yeah, everything from pecan farmer to please hire us, 20 table games dealers.
Is that probably the biggest challenge right now you're facing when recruiting at the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma?
Now, for us, our largest challenge in recruiting tends to be being in Southeast Oklahoma. We're not exactly a metropolitan hub. So the largest city or metropolitan area is going to be the Dallas-Fort Worth area, which is about an hour and a half drive. So for us, recruiting, we have to recruit the surrounding areas into North Texas is actually where we get most of our web traffic, and people will commute in just to recruit for the nation. So in terms of like an applicants per opening basis, we do not get a huge amount of applicant flow. And, if you're within the reservation boundaries, you know about Choctaw Nation. But what we found is once you're outside the tribal boundaries, the further you get into Texas or into Arkansas, as an example, just not as many people are familiar with the nation. We just don't have a huge brand presence. So that can make recruiting a little bit challenging.
I know that hiring and filling roles in these uncertain times are a challenge. What are some ways that you and your team have flexed and adapted with success?
So I'm proud of what the team has done. I know since March, we've hired at least 3,000 plus external people into the organization. We just had a massive expansion where we added a 1,000 bed resort and we doubled the size of our gaming floor. And one of the things that we did is we kind of combined the old with the new in terms of recruiting. And we used a combination predominantly of, we knew most of our candidates are using a mobile phone, and most of them even lack an email address or a desktop. And we gave them an opportunity where they can actually apply for a job just with a text message, or they could apply for a job versus a Facebook job posting just with, they could see the Facebook job posting and just hit apply with their phone. And we gave them an opportunity to apply via websites like Indeed.com or Talaroom, where they could just use an easy apply and bypass our ATS entirely. So we made it so someone with a mobile device can see our job advertised and we would sponsor it. They would see it, hit apply, and within 24 to 48 hours, we would have a recruiter contact them via text or mobile, and we would schedule them to come in to meet with us face-to-face. And what worked really well for us is we had numerous amounts of actual traditional job fairs where we would have hiring managers who were at the event. And so our candidates would be contacted within 24 to 48 hours. They would come to the event and we would do one interview and then we would offer on the spot. And we even had our drug testing technicians on site. So we would really try to make the onboarding and candidate process really just as fast as possible. We found that speed, and especially if you're talking to a lot of people in hospitality and restaurants, speed is the number one killer. We know if you're not making an offer immediately, odds are that some other restaurant or organization is going to gobble that candidate up in a pretty short amount of time.
As someone who has a background in retail and high volume hiring, I love all the different things that you're doing, and particularly instant offer and drug testing. So really they can put that start date on their calendar and then hopefully end their job search and just start thinking about what it's going to be like working for their new employer, which is you. And
absolutely, they would come into the job fair, and oftentimes we would pair that with old-fashioned media. Maybe it's like an on-site radio station, and they'd have the music playing outside, and they'd walk in, and they'd literally meet with a recruiter, even if it's a walk-in, and we would have 20, 25, 30 different departments, and it was almost like a career smorgasbord. And they can meet and talk with who they want, and we literally had people stationed so they couldn't leave the building where they would ask them, have you left with an offer yet? Are you sure? Are you sure? And in addition, we actually had an opportunity to increase our pay for our more higher volume positions. So we increased that from roughly $13 an hour to $15 an hour in a lot of cases. And we attached a $1,000 sign-on bonus for a lot of the high volume roles. And what we found is that made those roles a lot more attractive to candidates in, say, our custodian or housekeeping or even cooks, bussers, those types of positions as an example that are a little bit more difficult to fill. We wanted to try to raise the pay and incentivize them as much as we possibly could.
I love it. I love it. Now, how are you communicating your results and what success looks like with your executive and leadership team?
So I will say this, I've been recruiting for about 25 years, and I even used to recruit PhD data scientists. I don't think those PhD data scientists have anything on our gaming data executives. So we would actually track on a weekly basis our openings by position and our offers, and we would graphically depict it. So every week I know exactly how many positions are open on any given week for any given department, and we even measure our applicant flow, and we even try to track our channels and what's working and what's not. So on a weekly basis, we're tracking our openings as well as our fills, and we can Now, we don't have a lot of levers to pull. I can't magically increase 1,000 applicants for things, but we at least know where the challenges are, and we can make some strategic decisions to do things differently. And I'll give you an example. So right now, we're having a rough time recruiting sous chefs and qualified bartenders. So as a result of we have data that shows, hey, we don't think you're going to fill a lot of these openings through traditional methods. Let's consider building a training program where we can hire a kitchen manager to actually train our existing cooks and give them the curriculum that they need to become sous chefs in time, and do the same thing to offer our internal associates an opportunity to become a skilled bartender. Because there's just not enough bartenders in our region, and people just aren't going to commute from Dallas. So if we can't buy the talent through a pay increase or a sign-on bonus, we're making the decision to train them. And I mean, that's just literally done this week.
This is fantastic. And I feel like you're giving everyone so many ideas. I have talked to the chief people officer at Torchy's. Her name's Elizabeth, and they have a program similar to this for their assistant managers in their restaurants, is putting them through a specialized training program like yours, because it has been such a challenge to fill those roles or give them the support that those managers need to step into that next opportunity, which would be restaurant manager, store manager.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, kitchen managers right now, we know we pay market. You know, a good kitchen manager is going to come in, say, about $55,000, $50,000 a year. But, you know, for a property as large as ours, at least for our Durant property, we have thousands upon thousands of people come through that property every weekend. And if you can make, say, $50,000 as a kitchen manager at one of our restaurants in the resort, or maybe $50,000, say, at Olive Garden in Sherman, Texas, which has not near the volume, they're going to be like, maybe I'll work a little bit less hard, you know, over there. So sometimes it can be a little bit of a challenge. But, you know, we do have numerous types of venues and high end. So, and we have avenues for them to become executive chef, but that just takes time. They got choices right now, and in hospitality and food and beverage, it's just a really demanding industry at present.
Well, Rob, I love all the ideas, and I obviously love chatting with you. I know that other TA leaders and recruiters would love to connect with you and learn more about the work that you do, and maybe just apply for a job over at the Choctaw Nation. Where can they go to do that? Where can they go?
Well, the best place to learn about Choctaw Nation is just through Google. Just type in Choctaw Nation, Oklahoma. But our career site is careers.choctawnation.com. But if anyone wants to talk recruiting with me, I always love sharing what we do, our tactics, strategy, technology stack. We're all in this together. It's one HR. And I'm on LinkedIn. Just look for Rob at Choctaw Nation in recruiting, and you're probably going to find me in Google. And I would be glad to help anyone who has any questions or wants to talk about some challenges, because we're certainly in this together.
Well, thank you, Rob. I appreciate your time.
I appreciate your time.
Our next TA Insights interview is with Diane Sanford. She is a tenured HR professional with a passion for helping people tap into their strengths and grow in their careers. With over 25 years of restaurant industry experience, she's led a variety of disciplines. She provides strategic leadership to employee relations, talent acquisition and retention, training and development, compensation, benefits and risk, and safety to the teams at On the Border. In recent years, she's developed curriculum for women leaders to expand their leadership capabilities in a typically male-dominated industry. Diane excels in leading safer operations, industry-leading retention and compensation programs, and forward-looking talent acquisition methods. Hi, Diane. Welcome to the Workology Podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about On the Border Mexican restaurants and the type of jobs you're trying to fill?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jessica. It's a pleasure to be here. On the Border Mexican restaurant is the largest casual dining Mexican restaurant chain in the United States. We are international. We have franchisees in other countries. Our biggest is in South Korea, and we are in 26 states across the domestic United States. We're about to open our first restaurant in Alaska in April 2022. The brand is 39 years young, and we spend a lot of time talking about who we are and making sure that we're relevant to today's consumer and employee. The jobs that we're primarily filling today are restaurant positions. We're reasonably small, though, even though we're the largest chain Mexican food. We have about 5,800 employees, and the positions that we need the most are in the restaurant. So everything from heart of house positions to servers, bartenders, and managers.
That's awesome, Alaska. I mean, and then you're talking about internationally. What a treat, and what an experience for people who are traveling over there to help open up those restaurants. Like I would just jump at that chance to be able to do that. What's the biggest challenge you face when you're recruiting talent right now? Is it quality? Is it a number of candidates? Is it the right people, or all of the above?
Aside from trying to meet people where they're at today because of everything that's shifted in the workforce expectations, it's really, we have the same challenges other people in hospitality have with number of candidates interested in the positions. But truly, for our brand being who we are, it's being the loudest voice, I would say, is the biggest challenge. How do we let people know what a great place on the border is to work in a way that's new and different from all the other opportunities that are out there? We want to be the sexiest option for job seekers, and the strategy behind how we get the message out, I really think that's our biggest challenge.
So what does success look like for you? I mean, how do you measure that?
Success from a talent acquisition perspective, it starts with how we're approaching the work, so the strategy. And for us, one way isn't the only way. So we've adopted multiple strategies, everything from trying to lean into technology. We've tested an app, a recruiting app that is much like a dating app. So the applicants apply and the hiring manager can swipe right or left to connect, which is very cool. So we're leaning into technology to share opportunities, as well as trying to diversify the way we advertise our jobs, really leaning into D&I job boards and leveraging existing partnerships with the bigger job boards. I will say, when you talk about talent acquisition, something that's not talked about a lot are re-recruiting your current employees. So we focus a lot on retention and have leaned into quite heavily our employee referral program, because we want our great employees to recruit their friends. So it's really in those three ways that we've approached the strategy.
I love that. And they're all very different strategies, but they suit different purposes. And like you said, diversifying is so important. I wanted to ask you about how you're communicating your results. So when you're having success, or maybe you missed your mark, but we're going to say you're having success, how do you talk to your executive team and your leadership team about those things?
Well, if it doesn't get measured, the work doesn't get done. So we report out results to both the operations leaders and to the executive team on a fairly regular basis, at least bi-weekly. From the operations perspective, there's a couple of ways to measure success. The first one, whenever you have a tactic or a strategy, the first measure really is operator buy-in. And are they engaging with what you're trying to do? Are they using the app, et cetera? So the level of operator engagement is one measure, the first layer of success. The other measures have to do with return on investment. So can I show incrementally that the program or the platform is driving applicant flow, driving quality hires, The ultimate measure is sales. So if I can connect what we're doing to driving sales, that's even better. But we talk about results frequently here.
So we've done a few of these interviews and no one has yet mentioned operator buy-in, but I feel like this is the key because you guys, your team can create all the strategies, make all the mobile apps, do all the things. But if the store leadership, the restaurant leadership team isn't bought in to the programs and initiatives that you are moving forward, candidates aren't going to come and they're not going to be promoting those things. That's fantastic.
It's a big deal. They're our customer, their jobs are very busy. And so, our job is to make their jobs easier. And if I'm trying to do something that is counter to what they have time for or what they think is right, then we're dead in the water.
Agreed. Well, I so much appreciate your time, Diane, and I know our listeners appreciate it too. Those who would want to connect with you and maybe learn more about what you and On the Border Mexican restaurants are doing, or maybe you have an opening on your recruiting or HR team, where can they go to connect with you to learn more about those things?
Well, thanks so much. LinkedIn is a great place. I'm on there 2 or 3 times a week. They certainly are able to reach out to me via my work email, and that's diane.sanford@ontheborder.com. I'm also on Twitter at DJSPHR, and so I'd love to hear from them.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Diane. I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. It was great to chat. Thanks so much.
Our last and final interview, but not least, is Jude Reeser. She is the Director of Talent Acquisition for Atrium Hospitality, the 6th largest third-party hospitality company in the U.S. She is a Director of Talent Acquisition for Atrium Hospital that oversees talent acquisition efforts enterprise-wide. She primarily supports the field by providing resources and training for HR leaders across the company's national hotel portfolio. So these HR leaders are able to efficiently and effectively source and engage candidates throughout the recruiting and applicant flow and process. Hi, Jude. Welcome to the Workology Podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about Atrium Hospitality and the types of jobs you are trying to fill?
Absolutely. Atrium Hospitality is one of the nation's largest hotel operators and is headquartered in Alpharetta, Georgia. We represent well-known hotel brands like Hilton, Marriott, IHG, and Wyndham. Atrium's national hotel portfolio spans more than 80 hotels in 28 states. We have over 3 million square feet of event space. Currently, and if you don't mind this shameless plug, but Atrium Hospitality was recently ranked #1 in customer satisfaction among third-party hotel management companies in the J.D. Power 2021 Third-Party Hotel Management Guest Satisfaction Benchmark. We are currently hiring for a large scope of openings, field operations, both exempt and hourly line level, customer facing and back of the house, sales, accounting, payroll, HR, shared services, and all levels of the organization.
Basically everything, it sounds
Yes,
like.
Yes, ma'am.
And you shared earlier that like the number of requisitions and hiring that you're doing is just crazy.
It has been crazy. Earlier, pre-pandemic, Atrium Hospitality, a company our size, we would have 300 open requisitions on a given day. Post-pandemic, March of 2021, we were sitting at over 1,300 requisitions that needed to be filled. So, and 4 times the amount with a fraction of the staff. So it's been quite a challenge.
That makes me a little twitchy for sure. I wanted to ask you, what's the biggest challenge you have been facing when recruiting talent at Atrium Hospitality right now?
Well, when you ask the question, 2 topics come immediately to mind. Number 1, there are not enough candidates for the number of open jobs. I saw a statistic in an article published by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and I'm going to quote this. There are approximately half as many available workers for every open job, 1.4 available across the country, as there have been on average over the past 20 years, which is 2.8 the historical average, and the ratio continues to fall. So changing the mindset of those involved in the recruiting process that we need to search and approach candidates versus the post and pray approach. It's a candidate's job market right now, and Atrium needs to proactively put the employee value proposition in front of the job seekers. The second topic that comes to mind is the efficiency of the recruiting process, that speed to hire. For example, pre-pandemic, we had the luxury to ask a candidate to return to meet multiple stakeholders across the disciplines. But between the second phone call today and the next visit, the job seeker will receive another offer from a competitor. We don't have the luxury of deliberation. Hiring team from recruiter, hiring manager, and final approver needs to be aligned on the minimum qualifications and preferred competencies so that we can make hiring decisions more quickly. And I don't think that we've achieved that yet.
I know, as you've stated, hiring and filling roles are a challenge right now in these uncertain times. What are some ways that you and your team have flexed and adapted with success?
Excellent. Where we've found some success, some measurable success, is a movement to virtual interview platforms, changing the mindset where a virtual interview is the traditional on-property meet, greet, and panel interview. The hotels that have been more successful in restaffing the last months have embraced this concept, making the interview itself more convenient. There is less time commitment on the onset from either parties, which sells the opportunity to enable an interview, plus takes into account new concerns as a result of the pandemic. The job seeker can meet with HR and hiring managers from the safety of their own home. A second thing that we've done that was a huge project from summer of 2020, fall of 2020, is our job descriptions have been completely updated, revamped. A team of Atrium HR and operations leaders reviewed the exempt and non-exempt job descriptions one by one and line by line and made them more relevant for the times. The updates allow us for more associate development, cross-utilization, and a chance to ask ourselves, do we really need this point as a minimum qualification? Is this a system or process that we can train? We've added some competencies to help define strengths needed to be successful in the position. For example, with technical innovations and all of the hotel brands that we work with, we needed to ask ourselves if the prior discipline experience using every hospitality operating system was truly necessary. And I personally think the answer is no. And by answering questions like that, it broadens the candidate pool by exercising our associate development capabilities.
I love that. You really made great use of some downtime, some slow time, and now your candidate pool hopefully will be wider than ever. How do you measure success when it comes to your work at Atrium Hospitality? What does that look like?
Well, from a TA perspective, and I have to preface this by stating I have an HR background. I transitioned into talent acquisition. It was early in 2021. And I've really been able to expand my vocabulary as it regards from a talent acquisition perspective. What I find most helpful and that I think transforms from the HR discipline to more specifically TA are the analytics, some of the analytics that myself and the TA team reviews weekly. Number one, we're watching very closely, of course, it's our own scorecard, the reduction of the number of open positions, but comparing that versus their turnover and retention. For every person that resigns, that is just one more position that we need to fill. So there's been a lot of focus right now on company continuous improvement. In fact, we're in the middle of a continuous improvement survey that the talent acquisition team that I was able to kick off just a few weeks ago, and we're currently in that season. We look at the average number of candidates per requisition. We have a requisition open. It doesn't do us any good if there's nobody on the requisition for us to interview or consider. We look at time to fill on a couple of different levels by enterprise-wide, region-wide, and then specifically location-wide. And what that gives us the opportunity to do is try to determine and focus on what are the specific challenges of each location. The challenges, for example, in Long Beach, California are different than what's going to be in, Springfield, Missouri. It's different and different challenges. Speed to hire, length of time a candidate's application is in different stages of the process. If an application hasn't been reviewed within 3 days, for example, it's been too long. And looking at a recent report just earlier today, I saw that's an immediate need for Atrium. That is an area of opportunity for us. It doesn't do us any good if an application sitting on a requisition that isn't reviewed for 10 days. And then if it sits for another 6 days with a hiring manager before it has the opportunity to be interviewed, we've already lost the candidate. They've already been picked up by a competitor. And then from a sourcing perspective, the pandemic really gave us an opportunity to take a look at what were the vendors that were used in the past, or the resources, the platforms, and were they really working for us? So taking the 2019 data, we had the opportunity to understand the ROI from the different platforms. We made some decisions and we made some changes, like from what's working. The ROI from the sourcing platforms that we are engaged with, our number one source, and we tried to figure out what was our number one source, and can we take a deeper dive? Are we fully utilizing the platform? Ensuring the tools we've made available to the field HRs is being utilized to the fullest, that they're familiar, they recognize them, and they're trained with the tools that are available. To communicate the results, Atrium hosts what we call an HR Hot Topic every Tuesday. It's 30 minutes, take it out of your day. It's a connection with my peer, Vice President of Human Resources for Field Operations, and myself. We partner. It's just 30 minutes on the calendar to review current HR events. And I make it a point to put TA on the agenda. The TA team reaches out and schedules sourcing strategy meetings individually with the HR leaders in the field, where staffing is where we're struggling the most to put. And what we do is we figure out how to put actions together against the challenges that we're having. We review the numbers. What have we tried? Let's see what we can pull out of the toolbox next. And then it's just a bi-weekly touch base for 15, 20 minutes with these leaders.
I love this. This is continuous improvement. And I love that you have your HR hat on a little bit while you're now have your foot in and everything into TA. I think that when we can see that these two things are interrelated, the retention and the acquisition of talent, it makes the relationship between hiring managers, store managers, facility managers, HR, and recruiting so much stronger. I love that this is what you're doing. I have really loved this conversation, Jude, and I know that our listeners would love to learn more about you and the work you're doing, and maybe apply for some open roles in HR and TA. Where can people go to connect with you? What's the best place?
Excellent. Well, there are a couple of different avenues. I'm absolutely active on LinkedIn. That is a fantastic resource. Very active in SHRM. That's another great avenue to network. I have a recruiter profile on Handshake and H Careers. And if anybody has an interest in any of our jobs, atriumhospitality.com is a great place to start. And my email address is jude.reeser@atriumhospitality.com.
We'll link to your Atrium website so people can peruse the job openings. And hey, it would be great if I got in the recruiting business on this side of things and said, hey, we're placing people from the Workology podcast. So thank you so much, Jude. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jessica. Appreciate being invited.
I love this series so much. I love hearing from TA leaders and getting insights and inspiration, especially now when so many of us are working crazy hours in talent acquisition. We have so many company recs to fill, and we need resources and information and support now more than ever before. If you are interested in being part of our TA Insights series or want to nominate someone, you can go to www.tainsights.com. That's www.tainsights.com. A special thank you to Heroes Jobs for powering this TA series. I'd also like to thank our Workology podcast sponsors, Upskill HR and ACE the HR exam. But most importantly, I'd like to thank you for joining the Workology podcast. This podcast is for the disruptive workplace leader who's tired of the status quo. My name is Jessica Miller Merrill. Until next time, you can visit workology.com to listen to all our podcast episodes. Personal and professional development is essential for successful HR leaders. Join Upskill HR to access live training, community, and over 100 on-demand courses for the dynamic leader. HR Restart credits available. Visit upskillhr.com for more.